apple pie and butterflies. The fragrance of cinnamon and baked apples permeated the air, usually a balm to Agnes's nerves. Today, it fueled the frantic dance in her stomach. This wasn't simply dessert, it was the dessert. The reigning champion of the county fair for 3 years running. A recipe passed down from her mother, each apple grated with laboring hands, accompanied by the soft cadence of hymns. A legacy, a taste of home, now felt like a vulnerable offering. She stole a peek through the oven door. A burnished bronze beauty. As she withdrew the pie, its crust shimmered with molten sweetness. With ingrained skill, she applied a gloss of melted butter, the final, crucial step her mother had always insisted upon. Agnes checked the clock. Leo would arrive any minute. She hadn't conveyed the gravity of this potluck, how it anchored her social world. He perceived it as a simple supper, an opportunity to socialize. She saw a trial, a verdict on her life's path. Upstairs, her wardrobe felt like a battleground. The floral print, too grandmotherly. The tailored suit, too severe. Finally, she chose a modest dress in a quiet blue, mirroring the afternoon sky. Her reflection offered a hesitant critique. Understated? She fastened a delicate silver necklace, a keepsake from her grandmother. Still lacking? A quick swipe of unfamiliar lipstick brought a flush to her face. A knock reverberated through the house. Her pulse quickened. He was here. Inhaling deeply, she smoothed her skirt and descended. Leo stood on the porch, his face lit by a broad smile. He presented a bouquet of sunflowers, their golden faces turned towards her. "They made me think of you," he said, offering the vibrant blooms. "A burst of sunshine." Agnes offered a tentative smile. "They're lovely, Leo." "Thank you." Stepping inside, his eyes roamed the pristine living room. "This is charming. It smells incredible in here." He nodded toward the kitchen. "Apple pie." "The apple pie," Agnes corrected, her voice barely audible. He frowned, sensing her unease. "Hey, what's wrong? You seem keyed up." He reached for her hands, his touch grounding. "Agnes, it's just a potluck. Food chatter. Nothing to worry about." "It's important to me, Leo," she responded, her voice wavering. "These people, they've witnessed my entire journey. They're going to scrutinize me. Scrutinize us." Leo held her hands more firmly. "They're going to see how joyful you are. They're going to see how wonderful we are together. And if they don't, well, that's their loss, not ours." He gently brushed a stray hair from her cheek. "Now let's go wow some church ladies with your blue ribbon special." He winked, and for the first time all day, a genuine smile warmed Agnes's face. Perhaps, just perhaps, he was right. Maybe everything would turn out all right. Harmony Creek's welcome. The aroma of baked beans, sweet potato pie, and fried chicken hung heavy in the air, a comforting, familiar blanket that usually eased Agnes's anxieties. Today, though, it felt like a perfumed shroud, suffocating her with anticipation. She gripped Leo's hand tighter as they approached the double doors of the Harmony Creek Church Fellowship Hall. Laughter spilled out, punctuated by the clatter of silverware and the gentle hum of conversation. Leo, ever the optimist, squeezed her hand back. "Smells amazing, Agnes. You weren't kidding about these potlucks." Agnes managed a weak smile. "They're an institution." The moment they stepped inside, a wave of greetings washed over them. Familiar faces, etched with years of shared history and Sunday sermons, turned towards them, eyes widening in curiosity. Mildred Abernathy, a woman whose eyebrows could launch 1,000 ships, was the first to approach. "Agnes Plumtree! Land sakes, haven't seen you looking so radiant in ages." "And who is this handsome young man?" Mildred's voice, usually a melodic alto, took on a slightly sharper edge. Agnes swallowed, her throat suddenly dry. "Mildred, this is Leo Maxwell." "Leo, this is Mildred Abernathy, a cornerstone of Harmony Creek." Leo extended his hand, his smile genuine. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mildred." Mildred took his hand, her grip surprisingly firm. "The pleasure's all mine, I'm sure." "So, Leo, Maxwell. Are you new to town? I am, Leo said, oblivious to the subtle interrogation. Moved here a few weeks ago. Agnes has been showing me the ropes. Mildred's gaze flickered from Leo to Agnes, her lips pursing slightly. Indeed. Well, welcome to Harmony Creek. We pride ourselves on our community spirit. Agnes could feel the stares boring into her back. She quickly steered Leo towards the buffet table, hoping to distract him from the undercurrent of scrutiny. Let's get some food. Mrs. Henderson makes a mean deviled egg. As they filled their plates, Agnes introduced Leo to others: Sarah Miller, the church organist with a penchant for floral dresses; Pastor Thompson, a kind, portly man with a booming laugh; and a handful of other women whose names escaped her in her current state of nervous fluster. Each introduction was met with the same polite smiles, the same carefully worded questions, the same lingering glances. He's energetic, one woman whispered to Agnes, loud enough for Leo to likely hear, after he had excused himself to refill his drink. Quite the difference in age, isn't there? Agnes's cheeks flushed. Leo makes me happy, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman patted Agnes's hand, her touch surprisingly cold. Of course, dear. As long as you're happy. That's all that matters. But the look in her eyes said otherwise. When Leo returned, oblivious to the exchange, Agnes forced a smile. She noticed he had a slight smear of potato salad on his cheek. It looked endearing. Everything all right, Agnes? Leo asked, his brow furrowed with concern. Perfect, she lied, picking at a stray string bean on her plate. Just perfect. But deep down, a familiar unease was settling in, a whisper of doubt that threatened to unravel the carefully constructed happiness she had been building with Leo. Harmony Creek's welcome, it seemed, came with a price. The weight of whispers. The air was a miasma of sugary casseroles and thinly veiled disapproval, a film Agnes could practically taste. Leo, bless his trusting soul, was holding court with Mrs. Henderson, recounting some saga involving a recalcitrant goat. Mrs. Henderson, though, seemed preoccupied mapping the topography of Agnes's laugh lines. Agnes plastered on a smile, each twitch of her facial muscles in agony. This potluck, meant to gently integrate Leo into her Havenwood life, had become an exercise in public dissection. From the sidelines, Mildred Abernathy, whose perfume reeked of aged wool and judgment, sidled up. Agnes, dear, she purred, her voice carrying like a stray cat's wail. Such an unexpected companion. He's certainly spirited. Heat flared in Agnes's cheeks. Leo's wonderful, Mildred. We're very happy. Mildred's lips tightened into a prune. Happiness is ephemeral, dear. Steadfastness, that's the true treasure. Especially now. The pat on Agnes's hand felt less like comfort, more like a brand. You always did have a flair for the dramatic, didn't you, Agnes? Remember that disastrous perm in '87? Utterly scandalous. Sensing the shift in the atmospheric pressure, Leo detached himself from Mrs. Henderson. Everything all right here, ladies? He slung an arm around Agnes's shoulders, his warmth a small sun against Mildred's arctic glare. Just admiring Agnes's zest for life. Mildred chirped, her smile a polished blade. Leo chuckled, totally unaware. That's Agnes through and through. Always ready for anything. He beamed at Agnes, affection radiating from him. Except maybe skydiving. Still needs some convincing. Agnes forced a laugh, a fragile sound swallowed by the murmur of surrounding conversations that seemed to swirl like a vortex around them. Eavesdropped fragments drifted to her ears. Quite the generation gap, always kept to herself, her poor mother. The undercurrent of gossip dragged her down. Each furtive glance, each hushed aside, eroded a little more of her resolve, fueling the creeping doubt that had haunted her since she'd extended the invitation to Leo. She tried to center herself on Leo, the crow's feet framing his bright eyes, the reassuring pressure of his hand. She fought against the sensation of being a specimen under glass, a woman who dared to color outside Havenwood's rigid lines. They navigated the room, exchanging pleasantries, but Agnes could feel the bristling tension from the other guests. A few offered strained smiles, most simply looked away. The air, heavy with the scent of barbecue beans and simmering anxieties, became increasingly oppressive. Agnes yearned for the solace of her garden, where the only whispers were the sighing of leaves. But she couldn't retreat. Not yet. She had to persevere, for Leo's sake, and for her own. She had to prove to them, and perhaps more urgently to herself, that she hadn't made a terrible error. Charming the congregation. The church hall buzzed, a hive of hushed voices Agnes recognized all too well. It was the sound of appraisal, judgment, and if fortune favored her, perhaps a hint of sincere curiosity. She donned a brightly hued dress, a hopeful shield against the scrutiny directed at her and Leo. Bless him, he was already working the room, navigating the landscape of buffet tables groaning under the weight of potluck offerings with the easy grace of a seasoned campaigner. Agnes watched, a familiar unease twisting within her, as he approached a knot of women near the window, their leader the formidable Mildred Abernathy. "Ladies!" Leo's voice resonated, carrying over the clatter. "What culinary masterpieces are gracing our presence? Is that a 7-layer salad I detect? My grandmother made a version that could settle international disputes." Mildred's lips compressed into a thin line. "It's a trifle, Mr. Maxwell, isn't it? Leo, please. A trifle, you say? Inspired!" "I've always believed the trifle to be the unsung hero of desserts. Such potential, so much creamy goodness." He winked. A beat of uncomfortable silence hung in the air like a poorly tuned organ. Agnes winced. Leo's usual magnetism, so potent beyond these walls, seemed to glance off Mildred and her coterie like water off a duck's back. He gesticulated with enthusiasm, words spilling forth in a rush, a clear attempt to bridge the generational divide through humor. "Speaking of heroes, anyone following the local team? Their pitching game is about as reliable as a politician's promise." A scattering of coughs was his only reward. Mildred merely adjusted her spectacles, her gaze sharp enough to cut glass. Agnes edged closer, a plate of luridly green Jell-O salad clutched as a talisman. "Leo was just complimenting the desserts," she interjected, hoping to salvage the situation. He beamed. "Agnes is far too generous. But truly, food history fascinates me. Did you know the trifle has roots stretching back to the 18th century? Imagine, ladies, the secrets shared over bowls of trifle through the ages." Mildred sniffed, the sound dismissive. "I prefer to dwell in the present, Mr. Maxwell. And in the present, I find myself pondering your intentions toward Agnes." The atmosphere thickened, heavy with unspoken disapproval. Agnes felt heat rise in her cheeks. Leo, however, appeared undeterred. He met Mildred's scrutiny with a disarming smile. "My intentions, Mrs. Abernathy, are quite simple. I'm captivated by Agnes. She's sharp-witted, compassionate, and has a laugh that could coax sunlight from a cloudy sky. Any man would count himself fortunate to have her." Agnes's heart skipped a beat. It was a tender sentiment, delivered with genuine feeling, but she knew it would fall short. Not with Mildred. Not with the silent, watchful eyes of the assembled women. The whispers swelled, a rising chorus of condemnation that seemed to vibrate through the floor. Leo hadn't won them over. He'd merely confirmed their worst fears. And Agnes knew, with a sinking sensation, the real conflict had just begun. Spilled tea and misunderstood jokes. The gravy boat wobbled precariously as Mrs. Higgins passed it to Leo. Agnes held her breath. She'd warned him about Mrs. Higgins's tendency to overload everything. Sure enough, as Leo reached for it, the boat tipped, sending a splash of gravy onto his crisp, white shirt. "Oh dear! I am so sorry!" Mrs. Higgins clucked, her face a kaleidoscope of concern and fascination. Leo just laughed, a booming sound that echoed in the otherwise hushed hall. "No problem at all. Adds character, right?" He grabbed a napkin and dabbed at the stain, but it only seemed to smear the brown gravy further. Agnes felt a flush creep up her neck. It wasn't just the spilled gravy, it was the way everyone was watching, their expressions a mixture of pity and barely concealed curiosity. She should have known better than to bring him. Later, as they stood near the punch bowl, Leo, ever the social butterfly, attempted to engage Mr. Abernathy in conversation. Mr. Abernathy, a man known for his staunch traditionalism and even more staunch disapproval of anything remotely modern, was a tough audience. "So, Mr. Abernathy," Leo began, his voice radiating genuine enthusiasm, "I was reading about this new community garden initiative. Thought it might be something the church could get involved in. Fresh produce for everyone, you know? Plus, it's a great way to get some exercise." He chuckled, adding, "Better than spending all day perfecting your bingo strategy, eh?" The words hung in the air. Mr. Abernathy's face turned a shade of purple Agnes had only seen on eggplants past their prime. A few nearby ladies gasped. "I beg your pardon?" Mr. Abernathy sputtered, his voice trembling with indignation. "Bingo is a cherished tradition in this community. It provides much-needed social interaction and mental stimulation for our seniors." Leo, oblivious to the offense he'd caused, blinked. "Oh, I didn't mean. I just meant." He trailed off, his usual confidence faltering. Agnes stepped in, her voice tight. "Mr. Abernathy volunteers his time to run the bingo games. It's very kind of him." She shot Leo a look that screamed, "Stop talking." The rest of the afternoon passed in a blur of forced smiles and strained conversation. Agnes felt like she was walking on eggshells, anticipating the next social misstep. The differences between Leo and her community, which had seemed charming and refreshing in the privacy of their dates, now felt like gaping chasms. As they drove home, Agnes stared out the window, the setting sun casting long, melancholic shadows. Leo tried to take her hand, but she gently pulled away. "Agnes, are you okay?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. She hesitated, then blurted out, "Do you even like my friends? My church?" He frowned. "Of course I do. They're different. But I'm trying. I want to get to know them, to be a part of your life. But you don't understand them," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You don't understand us." The silence in the car was thick and heavy, punctuated only by the hum of the engine. Agnes closed her eyes, a wave of regret washing over her. Had she made a mistake? Was their relationship doomed to fail because they came from two different worlds? The gravy stain, the misunderstood joke, the disapproving glances, they all swirled in her mind, amplifying her anxiety and fueling her self-doubt. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't brave enough to bridge the gap between her life and his. Kitchen gossip. The aroma of pot roast and apple pie hung heavy in the air as Agnes pushed open the kitchen door. She'd volunteered to help with the cleanup, hoping the mindless task would soothe the anxiety that had been simmering since she'd brought Leo to the potluck. The moment they'd walked in, she'd felt the weight of 100 eyes on them. But the sight that greeted her wasn't one of diligent dishwashers. A cluster of women, aprons tied tight, stood around the large stainless steel island, their voices a low, buzzing hum that stopped abruptly as she entered. Mildred Abernathy, her face pinched with disapproval, held court. "Well, speak of the devil," Mildred said, her tone dripping with thinly veiled disdain. The other women, Beatrice, Clara, and young Susan, shifted uncomfortably, avoiding Agnes's gaze. Agnes forced a smile. "Just came to see where I could help. We were just discussing the interesting developments in your life, Agnes," Mildred continued, her eyes narrowing. "Quite a surprise, wouldn't you say? A man so young." Beatrice piped up, her voice trembling slightly. "He's a lovely young man, Agnes. Very polite." But the forced cheer in her tone did little to soften Mildred's attack. Clara, ever the gossip, leaned forward. "They say he's an artist. Living in that converted bus." She made it sound like a leper colony. "Doesn't seem very stable, does it? Not the kind of man you'd want to, settle down with." Agnes's stomach churned. She hadn't even told anyone about Leo's bus, a detail she'd carefully guarded, afraid of exactly this kind of judgment. The breath caught in her throat. Mildred snorted. Settle down? At her age? She should be thinking about her pension, not chasing after some bohemian daydreamer. Susan, the youngest of the group, dared to meet Agnes's eyes, a flicker of sympathy passing between them. But she quickly looked away, cowed by Mildred's glare. The words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. Agnes felt a flush creep up her neck, staining her cheeks. The casual cruelty of their judgment, the blatant disregard for her feelings, was a physical blow. She wanted to defend herself, to tell them about Leo's kindness, his passion, the way he made her feel alive again after years of quiet solitude. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, she stammered, I think I'll go check on the coffee. She turned and fled, the laughter, muffled but unmistakable, ringing in her ears. She hurried through the swinging door and out into the bustling church hall, desperate to escape the suffocating scrutiny. The cheerful chatter and the aroma of potluck now felt like a mocking reminder of her own isolation. She spotted Leo across the room, talking animatedly with a group of children, his face alight with genuine joy. The sight of him was a small comfort, a fragile anchor in the storm of her humiliation. But even that comfort was tainted by the knowledge that their happiness was being dissected and dismissed in the kitchen, reduced to nothing more than fodder for gossip. A hand to hold. The clatter of silverware against mismatched china filled the church hall, a cacophony that usually comforted Agnes. Tonight, though, it amplified the hum of discomfort that vibrated around her. She stirred her potato salad, the mayonnaise glistening under the harsh fluorescent lights, and tried to ignore the pointed stares. Leo, bless his heart, seemed oblivious. He was deep in conversation with Mrs. Gable, gesturing enthusiastically about something involving vintage motorcycles, judging by the few words Agnes caught. He had that easy charm, that knack for making anyone feel like they were the most interesting person in the room. It was one of the things she loved about him, but tonight, it felt like a spotlight highlighting the difference between them. She saw Martha Plumtree, her cousin, subtly nudge Eleanor Davies and whisper something behind a cupped hand. Eleanor's eyes flicked to Agnes, then away, a pinched expression on her face. Agnes's stomach clenched. Leo, finally disentangling himself from Mrs. Gable, turned to her, his smile bright. Agnes, you wouldn't believe Mrs. Gable's got a '57 Triumph Bonneville. We were just talking about. He stopped, his smile faltering as he took in her face. Hey, he said softly, reaching for her hand. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. She forced a smile. I'm fine. Just a little overwhelmed. He didn't believe her. Leo never did. He steered her gently towards a quiet corner by the coat rack. The air here smelled faintly of mothballs and old wool. Come on, he said, his voice low. Tell me what's going on. Agnes hesitated, then the dam broke. Everyone's staring, Leo. I can feel it. They're all wondering what I'm doing with someone like you. The words came out in a rush, tinged with bitterness. Leo's brow furrowed. Someone like me? What's that supposed to mean? You know, she said, avoiding his gaze. Young. Vibrant. You could be with anyone, and you're with me? He cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. His eyes, usually so full of laughter, were serious now. Agnes Plumtree, you listen to me. I am with you because I want to be with you. Because you make me happier than I've ever been. And if anyone has a problem with that, it's their problem, not ours. But, the community. She whispered. It matters, Leo. I've lived here my whole life. I don't want to be an outcast. And you won't be, he said, his voice firm. But not at the expense of your happiness. Or mine. Agnes, these are the people who bring casseroles when someone's sick. They're good people deep down. They just need time. And maybe a little nudge in the right direction. He winked. Besides, he added, his smile returning, I'm pretty good at winning people over. He took her hand again, his grip strong and warm. Come on, he said. Let's go back in there. Let's show them how happy we are. And if they don't like it, well, then they can just eat their potato salad in silence. He squeezed her hand. I've got you, Agnes. Always. Agnes took a deep breath, her heart a little lighter. She still felt a tremor of anxiety, but Leo's unwavering support was a lifeline. She squeezed his hand back, a genuine smile finally gracing her lips. He was right. Their happiness was what mattered. And she wouldn't let anyone, not even her well-meaning but judgmental neighbors, take that away from her. Maybe, just maybe, they could all learn to accept it. Speaking from the heart. The weight of 100 curious eyes pressed down on Agnes. Mildred Abernathy's sharp, disapproving gaze felt particularly heavy, like a physical blow. Leo, bless his oblivious heart, was cheerfully refilling his plate with Mrs. Higgins' notorious potato salad. He squeezed Agnes' hand under the table, his smile radiating warmth. This is great. You weren't kidding about the food. Agnes managed a weak smile. It was great, objectively. But the atmosphere was thick with unspoken judgment, a simmering disapproval that threatened to boil over. She'd known bringing Leo here was a risk, but she hadn't fully grasped the extent of the consternation he would cause. Agnes, dear, Mrs. Abernathy's voice sliced through the clatter of silverware. Are you comfortable? The question hung in the air, dripping with insinuation. Agnes felt a surge of anger, a defiant spark ignited by Leo's unwavering support. He believed in her, in them. Who were these people to judge what made her happy? She took a deep breath, the scent of pot roast and simmering resentment filling her lungs. Leo looked at her, sensing the shift in her demeanor, his brow furrowed with concern. He opened his mouth to speak, but Agnes gently squeezed his hand, silencing him. This was her battle. Slowly, deliberately, Agnes stood. The scraping of her chair against the wooden floor echoed in the suddenly quiet room. All eyes were on her now, a sea of expectant faces, some curious, some critical, all waiting for her explanation. Her voice trembled slightly as she began. I know some of you are surprised to see me here with Leo. She paused, meeting Mildred Abernathy's gaze head-on. And perhaps some of you disapprove. Another breath. She focused on Leo's encouraging smile, a beacon in the storm of disapproval. But I want you to understand. What Leo and I share is real. It's built on respect, on laughter, on a deep connection that I haven't felt in a very long time. She continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. He sees me, truly sees me, in a way that many haven't bothered to in years. He values my opinions, my thoughts, my heart. She gestured towards Leo, who was now standing beside her, his hand resting protectively on her back. Age, I've learned, is just a number. What truly matters is the content of one's character, the kindness in their heart, and the shared values that bind two people together. She looked around the room, her gaze lingering on each face. Leo embodies all of those things. He brings joy and light into my life, and for that, I am eternally grateful. A hush fell over the room. Some faces remained tight with disapproval, but others softened, a flicker of understanding dawning in their eyes. A few nodded slowly, thoughtfully. Mrs. Higgins, her face crinkled with genuine warmth, offered a small, encouraging smile. Even Mildred Abernathy seemed momentarily taken aback, her usual scowl faltering. Agnes finished, her voice clear and strong. I ask only that you respect our happiness, and that you judge us not on our differences, but on the love and respect we have for one another. She sat down, her legs suddenly weak. Leo squeezed her hand again, his eyes shining with pride. The silence stretched, thick and uncertain, before someone, a young woman she barely knew, broke it with a hesitant, Well said, Agnes. Then another voice, and another, until a murmur of agreement filled the room, a tentative acceptance slowly replacing the initial shock and disapproval. The potluck, Agnes realized, had suddenly become something more than just a meal. It had become a turning point. Seeds of acceptance. The silence hung thick as gravy after Mildred Abernathy's pointed question about Leo's intentions. Agnes felt a flush creep up her neck, her carefully chosen words dissolving on her tongue. Leo, bless him, just smiled that disarming smile of his, but Agnes could see the slight tightening around his eyes, the flicker of something akin to hurt. Then, a voice, unexpected and strong, cut through the tension. "Enough, Mildred!" All eyes turned to Mrs. Gable, her usually gentle face set in a firm line. She wasn't a woman who often spoke out, preferring to offer a comforting hand or a warm smile. But now, she stood tall, her gaze unwavering. "Agnes is a good woman," Mrs. Gable continued, her voice resonating with quiet conviction. "She deserves to be happy." She paused, her gaze softening as it landed on Agnes. "We all do." She took a deep breath and then, unexpectedly, she began to speak about herself. "My Thomas, bless his soul, was 20 years my senior. My family nearly disowned me. They said I was a fool, chasing after a man who'd be gone before I knew it. They called me selfish, said I was shaming the family name." A hush fell over the room. Agnes had never heard Mrs. Gable speak of her late husband, Thomas, or of the struggles she faced when they first got together. It was as if a dam had broken, releasing a story long held captive. "But Thomas, he saw something in me," Mrs. Gable continued, her eyes misting slightly. "He made me laugh, he challenged me, he loved me fiercely. And those years we had together, they were the best of my life. I wouldn't trade them for anything, not for all the disapproval in the world." She looked around the room, meeting the gaze of each person in turn. Who are we to judge Agnes for finding happiness, even if it doesn't fit our narrow expectations? Haven't we all learned that life rarely goes according to plan? The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. The judgment didn't vanish entirely, but it softened, replaced by a hesitant curiosity, a flicker of understanding. Even Mildred Abernathy seemed to deflate slightly, her pursed lips relaxing a fraction. The aroma of baked beans and potato salad still lingered, but the flavor of disapproval had dissipated. Small pockets of conversation resumed, no longer laced with whispers and sidelong glances. Mrs. Gable's words had planted a seed of acceptance, in the fertile ground of their small community. Agnes felt a warmth spread through her, chasing away the chill of earlier. She met Mrs. Gable's gaze and offered a watery smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Leo squeezed her hand, his smile genuine this time. "She's right, you know," he murmured, his voice low and reassuring. "You deserve to be happy, Agnes." They lingered for a few more minutes, navigating the now less hostile conversations, accepting tentative smiles and nods. As they walked towards the door, Agnes reached for Leo's hand, intertwining their fingers. His hand was warm and strong, a comforting anchor in a sea of uncertainty. Stepping out into the cool evening air, Agnes took a deep breath. The stars twinkled above, indifferent to the dramas of their small town. "Ready to go home?" Leo asked, his voice soft. Agnes nodded, a genuine smile gracing her lips. "Ready," she said, and for the first time in weeks, she truly believed it. The road ahead might still be uncertain, but they would face it together, hand in hand, armed with a newfound hope and the quiet courage of a woman who dared to defy expectations.